Hey everyone, I'm back to share a little bit more about the part of my life that consists of all these visionary slips. Now, what's I going to say about that? It's a very long, elaborate, and personal story about me going to the visionary slips, and that's why, or into the visionary state through these little slips. And I say that it just seems like it happens without you knowing it. Just slips in a little extra slice of time for you. And if you're not familiar with this conversation, that's part of my playlist called the JodyVision. So, um, again, saying it just seems like a really personal story and stuff, and pretty much it is. But I think it's worth taking a look at just because it's an example of the fact that visionary state or the parallel dimensional timeline we're talking about here is a real thing. And so what I've been sharing is sort of my own personal learning process about it. And so that's what I want to talk about today, while including some of the events that come along with the visionary state. And I want to look back at some of my earlier conversations and where I'm being educated now. When I went to see my dad in '98, if you saw that video I mentioned, I went over to my dad's landlord. She was a nice older lady who I used to go over and chat with, and just briefly she mentioned to me that my friend Billy was part of a special education program. So beginning with that statement, I wonder if there's some truth in that, because I do feel privileged to be exposed to this phenomena, regardless of how it plays out. I think that seeing the visionary state is the revelation in itself, and it's important because right now it's relevant to us, at least for the sake of the conversation you're always hearing, is people wonder if Bible prophecies are coming true now. Some people are some people say, it's just all horse hooey, it's just a book and all that, but at the same time, it's a colorful conversation because if there's a spirit world, and the Bible, for example, contains a lot of messages that they would want us to get, like from God, for example, right? Should have the word of God in there, then why are they telling us about Armageddon? Why are they telling us we're all going to die or something like this? And, for those people who think God controls everything, like, oh, he wants it like that. And it's like, well, like I've been saying, we are a living universe trying to survive in nature, and if it has the component of conscious presence that communicates to us about this stuff, all they can really do is tell us to get ready for it, right? So we're getting ready for a mass extinction. And so the religious people like this wondering, are Bible prophecies coming true? I think people looking at it scientifically are just straight up threats of nuclear war and all the damage that's being done, and what if the sun has a major sun flare come out. There's a lot of things in nature that could kill us already. So like if there's any truth in the Bible prophecies or what we call Armageddon, that's because what I'm experiencing, for example, is that beings in the spirit world can see potentialities. They could see the potential for whatever's coming to happen, and if it does, there's a lot of things we need to be prepared as a soul. So that's kind of where I go back to the conversation with Rosie, and we were talking about what's the use of me seeing the future if I can't change the future, and it's mostly to kind of be ready for it, rather. So that would be an excuse, anyways. So being educated on the visionary state or going into the parallel dimensional timeline, I can look back to Jason when he started telling me, we could be in a parallel dimensional timeline, that you get there by visionary state. So he started out explaining that and went on about a number of things. So it sounded like he knew a thing or two about Frontline Assembly and was saying that they're in Denver quite a bit. But along with that, trying to think what else he said. I kind of want to keep this moving, but I don't want to forget anything. So he brought up something about, when you're in the visionary state, that the people you're talking to aren't really the people you know, that they're played by actors, so that means like, for example, that wasn't really Jason, or like Billy wasn't really Billy. I think he mentioned like, Billy was played by an actor, and he was sent to this young lady to what you call to this I don't know, stop her from ending her life or something like that. So being played by an actor, being part of a special education program. So that's where I kind of laugh, like I'm not really looking for Billy, but I think I've been just looking for Billy. Or like, anyways, let me see here. What's going on with these conversations? Explain to me how this works. And then Rosie also explained this a little bit to me too, like how I'm gonna time travel, and that it's like when you're in the future looking in. It's like you're there, but you're in a parallel dimensional timeline, so it's like a reflection of reality. And so that's where I got that tidbit from her, So, so that's where I feel like these guys are trying to teach me, what the parallel dimensional timeline is, and so it proves to me that it might be something that really exists, and that could be why we have information like that. Why, Armageddon is a potential reality. Now, this isn't something I'm not like super interested in this. I'm not a big Bible scholar or anything. The only reason I talk about it is because it was brought to my attention in these visions. But then you look at the artist, Bill Lee, Frontline Assembly, and it's kind of funny. I asked a friend of mine to check out Frontline Assembly because they're coming to town. If he wants to see them, he'll know what they sound like. And he went into, probably pulled them up on YouTube and went through all their material and said, Jody, this music is all about end times. And it's like, yeah, exactly. That's what I think. Maybe that's like, we're kind of using Frontline Assembly as part of my personal confirmation. Maybe that's the thing. So, anyways, it's just really, it's just really wild how like all this stuff kind of gets weaved in so well that it. Unfortunately, I haven't been writing it down. Like I have a quick list here. I'm kind of glancing at, and so as I've been kind of trying to figure out who Bill Lieb is, so like after talking to Rosie, she said some stuff about how you have the soulmate, he's known you all your life, and then what else did she say? But then she was kind of hinting at he's in the music business, and I'm gonna go to a show, and he's gonna end up yelling something, and they're gonna blur his voice out. So I don't know. She said he's gonna ask me to marry him, like if he was gonna say it at that show, or he's just gonna ask me to marry him eventually. But coincidentally, he was yelling something. So when I went to that show in '99, I kind of remember him starting to yell, like, if you care about music so much, then blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, it's just gonna blur it out. So that's where, like, I had a lot of visionary slips, and maybe it didn't happen, but like hearing her say that, so those were like little keys. I get all kinds of weird little keys like that. So let me see. I'm trying not to forget anything, but yeah, before we went to that show in '98, I did read a magazine article where I think it's pretty much like in reality. So reading this magazine article, it was I don't know if it was like Sideline magazine, maybe talking to Bill Lieb about the album they just released called Flavor of the Week. So when I went to see him in '98, that's the album they were playing music from and promoting. And he said a couple of things in there that I kind of remember, like as a band, they're not fashion oriented, and they're not gangbangers, and I think Billy was saying he doesn't really like the bar scene and the club scene. It just seems like all people do is spend money on clothes and come and show off like women coming in and showing off their expensive outfits. And I'm thinking, I kind of think, I was thinking, listening to that, I feel the same way. Maybe this was somebody who'll be easy for me to talk to, because he doesn't like all that stuff either. And so that's where, like, when I did go to see them, and it seemed like he ended up blowing me off to hang out with the fashion snobs. That's where I felt like he's kind of a liar, kind of a hypocrite. And then he was saying something about how he has to stay home and play house, but his bandmates get to go around and date and all that stuff. So it sounds like, this is somebody that's married. So like you get somebody over here telling me, oh, you have a soulmate and he's in a band. Well, it can't be this guy. This guy's married, right? So not sure at that point, but like I said, I went to see him and I met his wife, and they wouldn't tell me that it was his wife. Like I should have known that, like if I knew enough about them, but that's the funny thing. So just because these guys kept it a secret, made it something that took me maybe a few years to find out, and so that's where I kind of wondered if he was married or not. And so that's another one of those funny things where people are told in the music business, you want to pretend to be single. It helps make more record sales. So that was their policy for that reason. And so that's why it took a while to find out. So I don't know if there was anything too strange in it. I think I found out that Bill likes Rottweilers, and I kind of think my friend Jason said that in the Visionary Slip, that he has a Rottweiler. So, and I think that's cool because we had one too, and it'd make a perfect pet for a guy like Bill, because if you notice, if you've ever known one, they talk like little monsters. They're just like, so yeah, it should be the type of dog he gets. But another time I had this big old gold mine magazine with an article about Skinny Puppy. I'm trying to figure out like if it was that year or the next year. I can't remember quite when I read this magazine, but this was definitely one of those ones where I must have had a visionary slip and saw a part in there that wasn't there later. So now I was talking to Rosie in that earlier conversation, in that in that visionary slip where I thought I got that phone call. So we talked quite a bit, and that's where she's telling me I should write Bill. I need to start getting used to writing. And she told me that she was also a writer, so she's a freelance writer, and I might see something she's written. And so so it appeared as if maybe she added at least a small paragraph to this article. So the article was about Skinny Puppy, then it went on a little tangent about Bill Lieb and explained something about his name is Baldus Van Buren, but we call him Billy because it's easier, and I can't remember what else it said, but it just seemed like it was quoting Rosie. Like when I had that vision back in '82 where I was first introduced to Billy and Rosie was explaining all this to Mom and Dad, that was like the quote, being used right there. And then it went on to explain how he left his wife for a very young girl. And so that again implies, he might be married at this point, even though he may not always remain married. Okay, so so very interesting that I keep feeling 98-ish for this. I can't say for sure, but either way, it was before I found out. So if it wasn't 99, then 98. I remember reading this article, so it touched on his personal life as far as like he's leaving his wife for a much younger girl. So this did come true later. Very interesting, but it wasn't me. It was somebody actually younger than me. Now, so anyways, let me see. Another key point in there. Now it went on about the album Tactical Neural Implant, and what that is, it's like this little triangular shaped thing with hooks in it, and they're put either in optical nerves and in the spinal cord back here. It's like an alien implant, and it had like a picture and all this stuff. And sometimes when people get them, it seems like the eye that it's attached to doesn't work so good. And so later on I started remembering this stuff, like, oh wow, like I was told this by reading this magazine, and I think I got the magazine out and started looking through it, and it was all gone. Like that whole article, it was just about Skinny Puppy, and the section about Bill Lieb was all gone, and the tactical neural implant was all gone. And so that's kind of how it gets me. So it's kind of like I feel like I'm being trained to know what the visionary state is, and I'm seeing like different varieties of how information is delivered, for example. And sometimes it seems like information from the future is getting sent to the past, and that's what I'm going to figure out at some point. And so let me see here. I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out, right? So So just cool stuff like Jason. Before I got Rosie on the phone, it was like the vision with Jason. So like both of these visions is where they kind of talked to me a little bit about the visionary state and how it worked. Now Jason talked about someday there's going to be a book, some days there's going to be a movie, and so these connect later. So like so like when I go to Florida after I see their concert, my dad tells me about this book and it was just filled with information. And it's like, oh wow, I think this could be the one that Jason's talking about. Now later, I think Jason told me I need to see Fifth Element. That's going to be the movie that has me in it. So I'm going to talk about that one a little bit later. But I'm kind of thinking, maybe in '99. You know, it's hard for me to put my finger on it since again I didn't keep a diary. I went upstairs to my buddy Ralph's house and he was watching this movie called You Got Mail. And it was kind of eerie because this one part looked like this woman was living in my apartment and looking out those windows and saying, "Oh wow," you know, like somebody was out there doing something to send her a message, you know. And I can kind of relate to that. It just seemed like later on, I was going on to mindphaser.com or something. And I thought maybe somebody was on there leaving me some kind of a little clue. And so when I was looking out the window, I thought they were doing something to get my attention. And so that's just like really subtle stuff like that. So it was kind of spooky because again, it looked like my apartment, but there were maybe just a couple of things in there, like her friend was following around going, "He don't love you, he don't love you," and and it might have been a reference to something else, kind of like having this rock star walk off on some model that was giving him a ride to his hotel. So I don't know if that's a parallel to something, but just like really subtle stuff like that. When you see it later, you're like, "Oh, I remember this. Oh, I remember that." And it just really, it can be really haunting, to have all these little things sprinkled in, so that way you kind of loop it together, and you're like, "Oh, that's where that came from." And it's like taking something from the future and sending it to the past. So that's really kind of what we're getting closer to, is a bigger story about seeing how the information from the future gets taken to the past. It gets doled out in all these different ways, like people telling me stuff from reading things out of magazines, seeing a clip in a movie or something like that, And so I think it's an important lesson on discernment, because it doesn't matter how you receive information, and even if like you can go into visionary state and it seems like, it's exciting, it's otherworldly, but it's still, the truth of anything by the fruit of it. Like if you don't have instant proof or whatever, scientific proof in any case, I think that's kind of what this is preparing me for. Like if there's any such thing as Armageddon, or if I'm going to be going into visionary state, as I've been told by that one vision where I went. So Rosie gave me a call and she was explaining to me the visionary state, that someday I'm going to see Armageddon. And again, that's something I haven't really like worried about that much. Maybe there was a part of me that's always known, like if a big war breaks out, they could really blow a lot of things up. I could die that way, but maybe that kind of ties in with Armageddon. Maybe it's a reasonable concern, And anyways, just to wrap this up, I just kind of wanted to point out a couple of different ways that the visions work. So I'm at a phase in my life where I think the visions are kind of teaching me how they work, and they've been kind of using Bill Lee to alert me on it, to make me aware that it's happening. And he's a good character for the part, because when you look at the subject matter and some of his material, it seems like he's sort of pointing at the same agenda of Armageddon or end times and that type of thing. So forgive me for being like so meticulous. I have so many parts and pieces, and I also want to share some of my insight along the way, where it's interesting how that magazine, I reflected back on that. Now, I was going to say about that magazine, and someday Bill's going to leave his wife. Well, not only did he, but it was just kind of funny how I found out. I had a feeling in 2005, I got this album, one of his side projects, noticed you and I've talked about this before, where it looked like he was showing off his new girlfriend, right? So I thought, well, I was in the middle of writing him a letter. I really wanted to tell him all this stuff too, and so when I wrote him the letter, I explained a number of things like this. For example, like, I saw that magazine article where he left his wife for the young girl, right? So, Bill confirmed that himself. So we were on the dance floor, like 2007. That picture I point out behind me here. We were at the church, and he had this chick with him that was just sort of, I don't know if it was a pretend date, kind of how they'll give a rock star an escort to kind of keep give the guy away to like they use him like a buffer, I guess. So, and you don't want to interrupt them while they're dating. But it was kind of funny. Those two were dancing, and he was looking over his shoulder straight at me, and he goes, "I finally got the divorce." And I thought, why would he tell me that? But it's like I was saying before, when I went to see Frontline Assembly, and we met them after the show, he kind of made a sneaky little remark to let me know he got my letter by saying, "Well, I don't want people calling my house for technical advice." So I felt like it was a sneaky reply to that letter, like, "Yeah, I got your letter." So even though he got that letter, so I wrote him a letter and told him the story. He let me visit with him a little bit over at the church and stuff like that. So I'll share about the night we went to see that later, because there were also some colorful things leading up to that show. So not as crazy, but I don't know. So I really think it's fun sharing about this stuff, and I hope it makes sense in the long run. That you understand, like, when we go in a visionary state, and at one point I'm being told, okay, Armageddon's real. I might see it later someday, but at the same time, it seems like the vision mixes up stuff that's like true, and then some stuff that's not really true. And I think the moral of the story is, our Bible prophecies unfolding, or anything like that. We're dealing with prophetic information. It's still just information, and we'll know by the fruit of it. And the future's not set in stone. We don't have to have Armageddon if we don't want to. So it goes to show you, right, how much people probably, just seems like people love all these ideas of end times or earth changes or anything, because there's a part of us knows that things aren't right the way they are, and if something like that came along and happened, then it would bring about an automatic reset. So it would be nice if something caused us to reset, and we had to start over and see if we can avoid getting things to the way they've been, right? So, so if Armageddon happens, hopefully, we'll be prepared spiritually, and if I go to visionary state, hopefully all this training has paid off. So anyways, I'll come back and share more and talk to you then.